wearing a sign that says I'm a thief.
Yes, totally.
But then I also think there's like sort of a liberal thing that goes like, why do we have to be regimented by these sentencing guidelines that are very harsh? Why don't I sentence you to, you stole from someone. Why don't I sentence you to live among the people you stole from?
Yeah. Oh, that's I don't know what age I was when I saw this, but I'll never, ever, ever forget it. It was in one of those don't drink and drive videos they show you when you were probably in high school, like a freshman, or when you're maybe sophomore. I think that's when I got my driver's license, or junior.
Oh, this is so good. When you have to go to the morgue?
Yeah, no, not that, but it's even worse. They made us watch this movie about a guy who kills a young guy who gets his license, drinks and drives, and kills someone's kid. And the judge sentences him to every month he has to write her parents a check for $1 for the next 20 years.
Genius.
And it ruins his whole life. And then I think he was a star student and now works at an auto body shop. And he was handsome, but now he's got a beard. The most overt visual cues that it's not going well. And then I think he has a breakdown and writes the family enough $1 checks for the next 20 years. Wow. And the mom was like, that's not how it works, Buster. And I'm like, that's what liberals would do. They would fuck with your mind that way.
Wow. See, I thought, I wanted you to say, he kills someone.
Oh, should we do take two, Tim, on this podcast?
No. I was just trying to set myself up for a great joke. You can tell me if it's good.
Go ahead.
You'll go like, let's pretend you said, this person killed somebody in a car crash, so they were sentenced to go work at the morgue. They had to go work at the morgue. And then I would go, what do you mean had to work at the morgue? More like got to work at the morgue.
Like I have to go to Disneyland. That's good.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's great. Anyway, but you're right. There is something puritanical about both sides. There's something like, I think, a fetishization of justice as liberals see it, and then there's a total fetishization of violence and darkness and condemnation the conservatives want.
And I know the objection to, because I also had dinner over the weekend with a bunch of friends who are lawyers, and they said that one of them said that her dad cannot watch The Good Wife because he's always like, that would never happen. That would never happen. So I think there has to, the scene when the judge is like, I'm sentencing you to spend the rest of your life on the internet, I think that the kid who has been sitting there like comatose the whole time, the attorney starts to object, like, Your Honor, that's cruel and unusual punishment. And then the kid like grabs him by the hand and is like, no, stop. Like, I want to live on the internet. And then the judge looks back at the parents and the parents like nod like, that's actually a great idea. Like, he would love the internet.
And then we wouldn't have to worry about all these bodies piling up and just leave her online.
Did you like how I'm so unemotionally attached to this story that I just changed the gender of the main protagonist without even realizing it? Doesn't really matter.
No, I mean,
we're just spitballing here.
I mean, one of the biggest things to come out of the narrative, I think, about the Parkland shooting, if we're going to be talking about what we're talking about here.
Children committing violence or being victims of violence.
And then it started with not my first go-to for any kind of authority on anything, but Michael Ian Black on Twitter was talking about how boys are broken. Someone at our company also made a joke about banning boys.
Somebody at the Wrap made a joke about banning boys?
And I'm like, I guess it's a cute joke, but it's also like, there is an overall acknowledgement of masculinity in crisis, I think, which is very real, and I think it's underlying of why Trump won. I think it's underlying of sexual regression, I think all that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating that you would change the gender in your premise because that's probably a more urgent thing. But also, I'll just say too, there's a fantastic documentary about Amanda Knox that came out before the election, the presidential election in 2016, and these two filmmakers made it because essentially they thought it was fascinating how we all as a society agree that women and girls should behave in public spaces, or in any space for that matter. So they looked at why is Amanda Knox devious for going to an underwear store after they find her roommate hacked up? She must have killed her. So I think it's fascinating to explore when two 12-year-old girls hack up within an inch of her life, one of their classmates, we have a mental illness conversation. And if two little boys did that, I think it would be like, how do you make a monster at only the age of 12? By the way, there's another great movie about that called Boy A, which was Andrew Garfield's breakout movie. Watch it.
The mental illness thing is so interesting to me because there is definitely a thing where conservatives say, wow, this is such a political episode.
Yeah, I know.
Where conservatives say it's mental illness.
We thought it was going to be a horror pitch, and here it is.
It's mental illness, and liberals say it's guns. And it's honestly, it's both.
It's totally, well, one is the symptom, and the other one is the self-driven treatment, right?
And we get into these, I was thinking about, with this case, with the Slenderman case, people said, the problem is the internet. And I want to be clear, like, my little Black Mirror-esque story is a total, like, play on that idea. Because I don't actually think the internet is the source of these problems. I think mental illness is the source of these problems. And it's funny that when I was a kid, I remember that, like, Satanism or heavy metal was the source of all the problems. Yeah. And it's like, no. And like back in the 20s, it was probably jazz that was the source of the problems.
Yeah.
Like, jazz is making them mad.
Yeah.
They're
rock
going
and
mad
roll.
for
That
jazz. It was rock
Elvis,
and roll.
Elvis moving his hips. I have one of my best friends from high school who is a grown woman. She has 2 children. To this day, her Irish Catholic mother says, "Oh, remember when I caught you girls devil worshiping?" And she's but then she's like, "Mom, it's a Ouija board." It was like every American household in the 70s and 80s and 90s had one, but like her mother to this day swears it was devil worship.
Okay, but like as a child of the 80s, I wouldn't use a Ouija board. Like I would not use a Ouija board. I will not have things. I will not have things end pointing downward. Because that's like indicative of hell.
Oh God!
Like I will not.
That's so Catholic of you.
I'm not even Catholic. I don't like things to end on the number 6 because of the
that's
devil.
OCD.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
The devil?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, the devil stuff is real.
Oh
the
my
devil
God!
Stuff. I quit reading comic books because I found in the cover of Gotham by Gaslight a Batman comic where he fights Jack the Ripper. What I thought was a hidden 666. And I was like, no more comics for me.
Tim, I've never known about this latent anxiety in you.
I was a total church kid. I had all of this. But, like, I grew up during the Satanic Panic in Los Angeles.
Satanic Panic. Oh, is this a ripple effect of the Tate LaBianca murders?
No, it's Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Oh, yeah.
Who used to, like, play with satanic imagery at all of his very horrible murder scenes.
Is that the one in Franklin Village?
He was all over the place.
Okay, because that was the one I lived in that apartment in Franklin. Oh God, that one I lived in Franklin Village. I lived in the staging area apartment.
Oh
no, that was the Hillside Strangler.
You lived in the Hillside Strangler staging apartment.
I did.
Wow.
Only apartment they had that had central air in it. Because I didn't know before I took the apartment, guys. I was there for only a couple months. Anyway,
but then listen, you stayed there for 5 more years, and that's weird.
And now I'm still there. I want to make one more thing clear. To your point, because I think it's an important thing to point out that might be for this adaptation that may or may not happen, but also for the context of the Slenderman story. A big motivating factor, because I think you said earlier, even just a couple minutes ago, that the internet is to blame. The Slenderman myth, from my understanding, from reading the coverage and watching the doc when I did, comes from a vast community that is a very bad neighborhood, not unlike Reddit. I think it's even on Reddit. It's called Creepypasta.
Oh, but Reddit's not a bad neighborhood. It has bad neighborhoods within it.
You name one uplifting good thing on Reddit. Name one purely. I want one Catherine Hahn of a thread on Reddit with not a bad thing in it.
When I wrote a story like 5 years ago about Rob McElhenney on, I hope I'm saying that right, on
when he got fat for
Philadelphia,
fun.
When he got fat for one
that
season.
story still traffics, by the way.
It still traffics because of Reddit. Thank you, Reddit. We love you.
But if you go to that post, it's probably like fat people should be shot. Or
no.
Yeah.
No,
Reddit's a bad neighborhood.
Like, this is probably the funniest thing anyone's ever done, and it is.
Oh my God.
It's so funny that he did that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm jealous that he could lose it is my whole thing. But anyway, Creepypasta is the message board that gave birth and rise to Slenderman and its popularity, and everyone's weighing in. But it's a very competitive, toxic space full of young teenage males who are like, nah, like, and then the girls are on there. I like that's a very dark, warped social engine. And I think the girls didn't want to just impress Slenderman. I think that on those boards in the late of night, while her probably middle-class parents are sleeping before they go back to their next, working American people are like poring over these matchless threads, trying to form identities, being 12 and really fragile, and then sort of having to ratchet up their competitiveness to stay relevant in this really weird community. So I think that should be a part of whatever it might become.
This is another thing for this little story I want to tell. The father actually had to talk about how he had experience with mental illness that never led him to do anything violent.
He's like, funny, when I was a Slender Man and he inhabited my body 20 years ago.
He had audio and visual hallucinations. Like there was like some schizophrenia in their family. And it is like, they were trying to make the case that this is a legit thing. This isn't like something we made up to get out of trouble. This is something that's gone on in our family. So I thought it would be good for the story if they have a history of schizophrenia that for some reason is never really addressed.
Yeah.
And I think it's also because I just read Painfully Rich, the book which provides the basis of All the Money in the World.
Oh.
And is 1,000 times better than All the Money in the World.
Okay. By the way, what a movie title. Painfully Rich is awesome.
It's called Painfully Rich, and then they changed it to All the Money in the World because of the movie.
Oh, you're saying it was the source material. I thought it was like a prequel of some kind.
It was the source material. The actual kidnapping of the young Getty takes up like maybe 1/10 of the book and doesn't even happen until like 3/5 of the way in. Mm-hmm. And it's a riveting book all throughout. Like it's disappointing when that happens, not just because it happens, but also because like you don't want the book to end, and you know the book is going to end pretty soon once that happens.
And then someone's going to put his ear on a piece of paper.
They really do. They really do. But with that book, you just see how like when people are rich enough, a lot of things is just excused. Like really horrible addiction just went on for years. I just thought that could be a thing. Like that could be a reason that the girls or boy is never diagnosed.
Right.
And that it gets to the point that it gets to.
Yeah.
And also, it also gives you a chance to criticize people who spoil their kids and let them have too much screen time. Yeah. Which I think we all like movies that let us get angry at somebody else.
Of course. And then I think that we're finally closing in on a massive, massive generational gap to where, an old editor of mine at the LA Times always said, and I really appreciated it, that she was, she's 15, maybe 20 years older than me. Objects on Twitter appear closer than they are in life. And she's someone who is very, very capable of separating and walking away from anything that is eventized or dramatic or seems consequential that has anything to do with the digital. It's the same thing with, we had Armie Hammer for our screening series right before the holidays with Call Me By Your Name, and he just got into some trouble for responding to a huge hit job piece on him in BuzzFeed. And he said to the audience, he's like, I was so mad, and I was like slamming my fist on the table. I think I said, or my wife said, if you delete that app, it goes the fuck away.
That's right.
And the idea, and everyone kind of laughed and then looked at each other because we're like, oh my God, if you don't engage in it, it's not consequential to your life. Unless you get maybe like a nude photo leak or something along those lines. But I think that we're dealing with maybe the last generation of parents that understand that 12-year-old girls that are allowed, or any child, 12-year-old child who's allowed to engage in the internet that much, that is an entire subset and a subculture that is very consequential to their identities. And you can't look at it as like, oh, she's on the computer, Bob, and then she stabbed somebody 47 times.
Well, another thing my friend and I were talking about, we used to go for like these long bike rides when we were like 12 and 13, or like walk around the entire town, like and come back at 9 or 10 at night or whatever. And people were just like, oh, how was your day? It was cool. We had $3. We bought a giant loaf of French bread and 2 purple Crush sodas.
Nice.
And just walked everywhere. Yeah. And, poked in at stores
talked
and
about
people.
666 imagery and comic books.
And talked about the devil.
Yeah. And how to shame the devil.
And, no one worried about that. Yeah. And it wasn't even that safe of a town. I mean, where I grew up was, much less safe than, where I live now, where I probably wouldn't let kids walk around. Yeah. It was, Satanic Panic and also, gang violence LA. It was, late 80s, early, this was late 80s. So it wasn't, we had run-ins. We, would get on the bus and, see people with guns. And we were just like, this is part of childhood.
Right,
but,
exactly.
The Stand By Me thing where, there were bullies and It and all of the Stephen King world where
Stranger Things.
You ran into real danger as a child. And at some point, I think parents just decided, let's not do that anymore. I think it was, in the last 15 or 20 years that they said, let's just keep them inside.
Yeah.
Now we have the technology.
And then phones, and if you're, and then, but that kind of access begets, I think, more control. Where it's like, how far are you? This far? Don't know. And now call me when you're back. And what I love is all those moms that are like, where are you? Send me a photo of you at Amanda's house. Now throw up a peace sign.
Seriously?
There's all kinds of BuzzFeed threads about this kind of helicopter parenting. Yeah. But what I meant, in case I wasn't clear, what I meant was, I think we're closing in on an generational gap where parents who think that kids who are engaged in internet culture are adorable or nerds or are doing something harmless. Essentially the new walking around town and disappearing for 6 hours is your 12-year-old being online until 3 a.m. talking about a fictional ghost.
Because you know where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
that doesn't mean you know what they're engaged in. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think parents quite understandably kind of like screen time a little bit.
Oh yeah, especially for young kids because they shut up.
Because they shut up and they're safe. Mm-hmm. But are they? And I don't actually think this is true, but I'm kind of playing